Hello, welcome to my review. In this video, I'll be reviewing two different sheets of short pips. Nittaku Hammond FA and Yasaka Roxa AO. A special thank you to TableTennis11.com for providing me with the two sheets for testing. Links to the rubbers will be available down in the description below. For quite some time, I've been watching Swedish player Mattias Carlsen play, and after some quick Google foo, I managed to find out he was using Rakza AO on the forehand side. Coincidentally, someone over on the mytabletennis.net forums had posted a video of Table Tennis 11's CEO who was playing with inverted on both sides at the time. However, Mr. Petrov himself left a message for the thread explaining that he has since switched over to short pips on the forehand side as well. I asked which pips he had switched over to, and the reply was Nittaku Hammond FA. At this point, I was offered a sheet of both Nittaku Hammond FA and Yasaka Roxa AO to test, and I was very excited to try out both of them. I had contacted Mr. Petrov asking why he was using Hammond FA on the forehand side, considering it's a slower, more control type rubber, and if he's ever used Rakza AO. He replied saying, "I tried Yasaka Roxa AO also. It is a very fast rubber indeed, and it allows to have spin in your strokes, so sometimes you can play it like a pimple in rubber. You are right, Nittaku Hammond FA is much slower, but this is what I need. I always try to use equipment with more control. The speed is secondary. The crucial points in the game in my case is not the attack, but service return and block." My original idea was to test these pips on the forehand, but it was quickly apparent that pips of any kind have no place on my forehand. Fortunately, all footage of me using pips on the forehand side have been destroyed. Fortunately, almost all footage of me using pips on the forehand side have been destroyed. So, with all of this in mind, and with my main Jusei hook blade, I started off with Nittaku Hammond FA. First off, it's important to reiterate that, like I said earlier, this is a more slow control type rubber, despite what the packaging and the marketing might say. As far as the physical characteristics go, the pips are somewhat small and well spaced, even more so than something like TSP Spectol. They are conical, with a flat base and vertically aligned. I'm using a 2mm sponge, and I would say it has a medium sponge, possibly facing medium soft. There is no tension or speed glue effect or feeling of that whatsoever. Not to say that it's completely dead like some of the other defensive rubbers that I've tried in the past, but it's somewhat close. The overall grip is not very high at all. These are definitely still short pips, but it's almost at the border between short pips and medium pips. It has less grip than Friendship 8021, but still more than something like Friendship 563. Passive blocking usually resulted in me netting the ball because of the spin insensitivity and the low throw angle, so blocks needed to be more active in general. However, chop blocks were excellent, providing plenty of both reversal or spin variation depending on the stroke that you use. Chop blocks were also quite fast. I found attacking with this rubber to be rather difficult, requiring a lot of precision in your angles and with very little room for error, as is the case with most lower spin pips when it comes to attacking. When hitting through topspin, the stroke needs to be very short and quick, but an exact angle is very necessary. While it's not easy to do, the resulting ball can be tough for your opponent to handle, which I really enjoyed. Attacking underspin was quite good. Again, it's not the easiest rubber to attack with, but I'm sure if someone were to use this rubber for an extended period of time, they would get used to it. The resulting attacks have a very low and straight trajectory. So if someone got used to it, they could definitely send out some very dangerous attacks against a poorly executed push or a pop-up or something along those lines. Now, chopping. Chopping is easily one of my favorite things about this rubber. I feel I have a ton of control while chopping. The same ability to both reverse spin and vary spin that is found while chop blocking is present while chopping with Hammond FA, maybe even more so. All types of chops and all angles work and help the player when trying to make life for your opponent more difficult. I'm not a fan of using medium pips at all. When chopping with medium pips, I found them very difficult to use, as medium pips often only spit out dead balls no matter what stroke you're doing. With Hammond FA, the added grip seems to alleviate the problems that I've found in medium pips while chopping. Now, the biggest weakness while using short pips is the mid-distance game. This is also easily the biggest weakness with Hammond FA. Using this rubber to attack from mid-distance is not only difficult, but even successful attempts are weak and easy for your opponent. I would suggest that anyone who uses this rubber should prepare themselves to chop from mid-distance and further back, as attacks are only worthwhile close to the table. The sheet I use is 2 millimeters thick. In my opinion, I think this rubber would play best in 1.6, 1.4, or 1.2 millimeters. At these thicknesses, the strong suits of chop blocking and chopping will only become stronger. If I were to get this rubber again, I would definitely get it in one of these thicknesses, probably in 1.4 millimeters. After trying out Nittaku Hammond FA, I moved on to Yasaka Roxa AO. This sheet of rubber is indeed quite a bit faster and spinnier, just as Mr. Petrov had stated. It produces similar levels of spin to Friendship 80240, but is much faster than it. The physical characteristics of these pips are quite different compared to Hammond FA. While they are also conical in shape, they have a larger diameter, are spaced closer together, have much higher grip, and are horizontally aligned. My sheet is also 2 millimeters thick, and it uses the standard Rakza sponge, which is medium hard leaning on hard. Anyone who has used Rakza 7 or Rakza X will sort of get what I mean about the sponge hardness. In stark contrast to Hammond FA, and most pips for that matter, there is very heavy tension and speed glue effect. As you can see, there is a lot of doming and it doesn't lay flat. What's interesting is that while using this rubber, yes, it's fast and spinny as one might expect, but the feeling is very thick and somewhat pillowy, for lack of a better word. So while playing the ball, it produces clearly that of a speed glue effect rubber, but the feeling in my hand is that of a rubber that would play much slower than it actually does. This disconnect between how it feels and how it plays is not something I was really a fan of. I didn't really like that at all. Now, blocking. Standard blocking is easily my favorite part of Roxa AO. Both passive and active blocking were fast, yet still easy to control. Depending on the angle and stroke, you could produce an inverted-like block with some topspin, or a deader short pip-like block. In situations where perhaps you misread a serve or gave a somewhat loose ball for your opponent, I found Roxa AO to be extremely reliable in blocking and kept me in the rally when, with other rubbers, I may have lost that point. Chop blocks aren't nearly as good, especially when you're comparing with Hammond FA, but I was fine with that, as standard blocking with this rubber more than made up for it. Attacking with this rubber was relatively easy. Attacking both topspin and underspin felt very inverted-like, and most inverted-like strokes worked as long as your racket angle was a little more open compared to using actual inverted rubber. In all instances of attacking, the resulting ball was quite fast. This means that Roxa AO is threatening because of its speed, and less so because of any kind of weird pip effect like with Hammond FA and some other pips. Chopping was doable, and I was able to execute some good chops with it, but I found it rather difficult to do so because of its fast and bouncy nature. Chops would often go long when chopping at mid-distance, but it did its job at longer distances. This is definitely not a chopper's short pip though, not something I would recommend for that. As I had said, attacking with short pips at mid-distance is often a weakness, but Roxa AO does a very good job at alleviating that with the extra speed and spin that it comes with. If you're using Hammond FA, it might be wisest to chop, but with Roxa AO, It's quite the contrary, and I definitely would say that you're better off attacking at mid-distance.
Usually just the first letter was compatible, and now the first two.
Like most inverted tensors, this rubber isn't made below 1.8 millimeters, and I'd say with good reason in my opinion. I see no benefit in getting a thinner sponge version of this rubber. If you're using Rakza AO, your goal is maximum speed, so definitely go for the thicker thicknesses with this one. Something that I did notice is that serving with both of these rubbers didn't produce any kind of spectacular spin. These are short pips after all, but they did provide some sense of control for placement. I wouldn't personally use them for serving though. I found it difficult to keep pushes low with them also, but again, at least pushes could be placed fairly well just like serves. Overall, these two sheets of short pips are quite different, but they're very good for their specific purposes. If you are more of a defensive player who likes to control their game with chop blocks, chops, and the occasional tack to put the ball away, I would definitely suggest Nittaku Hammond FA. If you're a fast attack power hitter who wants fast blocks, hits, and drives, then Yasaka Roxa AO with a thick sponge is a great choice. After playing with these two rubbers, I still think Spin Lord Warren is easily the greatest short pips that I personally have ever tried, but for their specific purposes, Nittaku Hammond FA and Yasaka Roxa AO are both excellent choices. Thank you so much for watching my review. Goodbye.